Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to introduce you to our team for this Capstone project. We have Kamille Mosqueda, Mayra Bonilla, Sara Padilla-Casillas, and myself, Xochitl Morales. Our team wanted to get a holistic point of view as we approach the topic of the future of work. We believe that the workforce and the workforce pipeline, organizations, and leaders are all collectively shaping what this will look like. We also believe that the role of leadership is evolving and it's going to require preparation to meet its demands. Our team asked ourselves the question, with the workforce being more expressive of their demands and expectations, what do these leaders need to do to prepare to meet those while balancing the needs of the organization? Let's start with the first part of this question. Sara, how do we know that the workforce is being more expressive of their demands?
Thank you, Xochitl. And that is a fair question. Is the workforce being more expressive about their demands? Well, we concluded that they are. And we based this conclusion on the research we did. We looked at online articles and literature, as well as published studies who told us so. We also wanted to perform our own research, so we did our own studies. We reached out to 11 HR professionals and recruiters to hear what they had to say, because after all, they have firsthand knowledge. We also wanted to know what the incoming workforce had to say about this, and we reached out to USC graduate students because we consider them to be the incoming workforce pipeline. And also, it's just really the state of affairs. At least in my role, there's never a day where I don't see something come through my email about a presentation, a training, a symposium, or a panel discussion about the topic. So it is happening. The real question is, how is the workforce expressing these demands? What are they, and what can leaders do about it? Do you all remember the lesson we had with the horses about communication? That was a really fun day and a memorable experience. What we learned there is that communication is more than just verbal expression. You have to use your posture, position, and energy to apply pressure. Without those horses just won't move. Well, the workforce is doing just that. They are applying the pressure with their energy and their words to swing the pendulum. What we learned in the interviews we had with HR professionals and recruiters is that job seekers are being more expressive during the recruiting process, and they're doing it much sooner than before. Traditionally, people used to wait till maybe they had a verbal offer to negotiate some of their employment terms. Well, now they're doing it even before they get to the screening, which the screening is the first stage of the recruiting process. So they're saying, if this company does not align with my values, I'm not going to waste your time or my time. And they opt out of the interview process. We also learned that current employees are having conversations with their supervisors. They're renegotiating their employment terms. And if their needs are not being met, they're willing to walk away. We learned that in exit interviews, the top 3 reasons for leaving are compensation, career progression, and work arrangements. Work arrangement is the desire to work either in a hybrid or remote modality. Think about that. Work arrangements is not something people used to resign over, and now they are. And then we have the workforce trends, or some people call them revolutions. The Great Resignation, for example. For those of you who think that the Great Resignation is over, let me tell you, it's not. In fact, the U.S. Department of Labor released its latest statistics, and they stated that 4.1 million quits happened this past September. And there has been an average of 4 million quits a month now for the last several months. What's more, in a recent article by the McKinsey Quarterly, they stated that 40% of workers are thinking about leaving their jobs in the next 6 months. So this trend is not going away anytime soon. And then we have quiet quitting. Quiet quitting may not be what you're thinking. In this trend, workers are not quitting their jobs. they're doing their jobs, and just that. They're working within the limits of their work and the limits of their job description and their hours and doing nothing more. Why is this a problem for leaders? Well, because going above and beyond has been the norm now for some time. And in fact, it's almost expected. And workers are saying enough. If you aren't going to recognize my contributions, pay me fairly, or give me flexibility, I'm going to scale it back. And this is causing a gap in production. Who's picking up the slack? Kamille, you did some further research on the workforce and the current and the incoming pipeline. What did you uncover?
Thank you, Sarah. So, we've heard a lot of stories, but I think it's a good opportunity for us now to look at the numbers behind those stories. You can see that in this table, you have 4 different organizations, consulting firms that conducted their own study asking about what is the workforce demanding today. It's no surprise to some of us, perhaps, that pay is important across 3 of the 4 survey responses. By the way, the first 4 lines are the common answers across all of these surveys, that they value work-life well-being, right? So this is, again, I think something new. I mean, most people acknowledge that they are stressed, burnt out at work, but that was not enough for them to quit or to basically demand more things. But now they're asking that. I personally, from my own personal experience, I quit a job because they were both, I was both underpaid and burnt out. So I personally have been someone who tolerated a work environment of this nature. And then our team actually recognized that there was a gap in the data. We have a very rich information on those who are already in the workforce, but no one has really asked about those who are just about to enter the workforce, which are the young ones today. They might not necessarily have a lot of job experience, but they might have ideals on what they want to have in their first job. And here's what they told us. On the left column, we asked them first, as you search for your first job, what are your top job priorities? And here's what they told us. Not a surprise here, because our data thus far show that compensation pay is important to almost all people in the workforce and the current pipeline. Location is also important to them, right? Culture, hours, and growth. On the right side, however, we asked them a follow-up question saying that out of your priorities, what are your non-negotiables? And perhaps not a surprise here, those in the workforce pipeline want to be paid well and perhaps at least a living wage. And what has come up second, however, is culture. So over 1 in 4 of the respondents basically say, hey, culture is important to me. I need someone, an organization who can, who share my value, that perhaps I might not be the highest paid, but if they share my value, I might pick you. We also asked them a question about what do you look for in a leader, right? So these are workforce pipeline, keep that in mind. And as you can see in the word cloud, these are some of the keywords that they shared with us. Now, with regards to teach, they're looking for someone who, quote, teach their constituents how to get things done without them, unquote. So this means that they are still expected, you as a leader, you're still expected to teach them skills, how to do things. However, when they feel like they can now be on their own, that you'll have enough trust to let them do what they do best. And that's why you hired them, right? Mm. Now, in terms of leadership, these are the keywords that came up. They want someone who is motivating, someone who leads by example and not by demand. So perhaps the command and control style of leadership is essentially out the door by this point. They want someone who is accountable, self-aware, and someone who is experienced and worthy to be a leader. So what's really happening here is that we should really acknowledge that throughout the last several years, certainly, things are in flux. And when things are in flux, we should really think about how we can prepare ourselves. And my colleague Xochitl here is going to actually lead us through some of the trends moving forward. Xochitl?
Thank you, Kamille. Yes, through our research and discussion, we identified 3 trends that we believe will continue to reshape the workplace. Those include remote work and flexibility, DEI initiatives, and technology and AI. And we believe that these are not separate trends, but instead they are going to influence and support each other's progression through and within the future of work. Similarly, they can be used to balance the demands of the workforce and the needs of the organization. Now, as you heard from both Sara and Kamille, both our current and incoming workforces mentioned that they desire remote and or flexible work. A study by Ladders also shows that high-paying jobs and remote opportunities went from under 4% pre-pandemic to more than 15% today. This suggests that organizations are also responding to this rising demand. However, our interview and research also highlight that organizations and their supervisors still have negative perceptions of remote work. A study by SHRM also supports this, noting that more than half say they spend more time supervising remote workers, and almost half may even forget to assign tasks to them. So future leaders will need to manage this hesitation from organizations and will also need tools that can help them manage remote or flexible conditions. One technology that we saw that could help with this is virtual reality, which has historically been associated with gaming, but it is beginning to expand its use and its reach, especially as we look for something that simulates a more organic interaction throughout the day, as if we're in an office together. Bill Gates was recently quoted saying that virtual meetings will soon move from 2D camera grids, just like what the ones we're using now, to the metaverse. So leaders will help drive the organization's technology change management strategies, and therefore should understand what this means to the younger and incoming workforce generations. A study by McKinsey actually reported that 46% of Gen Z and 55% of millennials say that who they are online is an extension of themselves in the real world. And consumer surveys can also give us insight into the future of work. A similar survey notes that 35% to 46% of respondents intend to incorporate the metaverse into the work and their social functions within the next 5 years. Google's Project Starline is another example that we found of companies exploring technology to meet that demand of simulating the feeling of being together. Their display system creates a life-size and 3D experience where you can talk naturally, gesture, and even make eye contact. Now, as we saw and heard about earlier, organizations still value that in-person environment for productivity and collaboration. And we also believe that being together in person is still a valuable human experience. So while Google was an early influencer in creating those employee-focused and collaborative environments, trends in physical office space and building space design are also evolving across industries towards employee-focused spaces. I personally am seeing this firsthand within my own industry. And leaders and future leaders can shape that physical environment to help balance some of those needs for both the organization and their employees. Now, some new designs that we've seen have flipped offices to the interior, and the cubicles are going down to the window line. Health and safety and wellness certifications in gyms are also in high demand. We're also seeing collaborative spaces and flexible build-outs that support desk reservations and lockers. The second trend that we believe will continue is DEI in the workplace, which incorporates into the culture demand that we heard about. And diversity and inclusion were among specifically those workforce trend demands that we just heard about earlier. Our research also revealed that the need for DEI initiatives has grown within organizations. Another article by SHRM reported that companies have significantly increased DEI staff, budgets, reporting, and investing in the last few years. Meta's 2022 diversity report also shows that remote work and flexibility can help with an organization's talent search, just like Sara mentioned earlier is in need, and DEI strategy pursuits. Another technology trend continuing to reshape the workforce and the future of work is really that incorporation of artificial intelligence. We're seeing that both organizations and employees are increasingly adopting and asking for growth of AI in the workplace, as noted by ever-growing adoption by business adoption, as you can see here, and also by perceived employee productivity and work-life balance. Now, although our surveys and interviews did not specifically call out the AI and technology aspect, we believe it's already an unspoken expectation. The incoming workforce is growing up with more AI and technology, and they're going to continue to count on it in the future of work. We already see it in our day-to-day, opening our phone with Face ID, Alexa, Siri. My own daughter uses Alexa every day. And we're even seeing robots in healthcare assisting with surgeries or even helping with routine tasks, like our friend Moxie here. Moxie is an example of AI and robotics that supports hospital staff by running supplies and delivering samples, medication, and PPE. This is designed to allow hospital staff more time to focus on patient care. We believe similarly, other businesses are going to do the same and adopt AI to take on routine functions. And now employees and leaders can focus on those human and emotionally intelligent skills that AI and technology cannot yet do. And maybe it is an emotionally intelligent leader that is really best prepared to lead the future of work. What do you think, Mayra?
Thank you, Xochitl. Well, it's a VUCA world and leaders need to be prepared. VUCA is this trendy term going around right now in organizations to describe exactly what my colleagues have said. The workplace right now is volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And although some leaders can use this as an excuse for failing teams and organizations, a good leader needs to be prepared for the ever-changing world. So as you've been able to hear from my previous colleague, change in the workplace is inevitable. This in itself is not a new concept. So why now? And why touch on this again? Well, it's imperative that we do, because this subject now is that the world is not the same that it was 5 years ago. It's not the same that it was 2 years ago, especially coming out from the pandemic. And not only that, but there have been huge advancements in technology. Let's take at the rate of knowledge and how it's been doubling. For example, less than 100 years ago, the rate of knowledge was doubling every 25 years. And now it's doubling every 12 hours. This means that what you learned to do this morning can be wiped out or no longer useful by the end of the day. So this leads us to, how do leaders balance these workforce demands and the organization needs? And what my team came up with was that we need to change the paradigm from work-centered to people-centered. Okay, so many of you may have at one point in your life have experienced leaders that don't feel that they need to be loved or even liked, for that matter, for the workplace to succeed. And as much as this may be true, to have a cohesive and more engaged team, managers need leadership skills to create strong working relationships with their employees. Leaders with strong, trusting, and authentic relationships with their teams know that investing time in building these bonds makes them more effective as a leader and creates a foundation for success. Good working relationships increase employee engagement, and according to Gallup's meta-analysis of employee engagement, employee engagement have 41% fewer quality defects and 37% less absenteeism. A 21% increase in productivity was also seen. Okay, so our very wise former EML program director, Dr. Carol Geffner, would constantly remind us that the wisdom was in the room. So we took this to heart and we took these questions to those same people that are leading the way in workforce development. So from those HR interviews that we conducted one-on-one, we asked them what they thought leaders needed to master and continue doing to make sure that they had effective and efficient teams. And these were some of their responses, such as strategic planning rather than reactionary. And coincidentally, their answers lined up with the outside research that we conducted. Universities and organizations all over the country are teaching leadership courses similar to ours. One of the biggest takeaways from this research project for us is the importance of having people take programs like EML to learn the importance of leadership skills versus management skills. And another important thing is that we need to remain teachable and stay learning. We need to learn how to learn and learn to unlearn, okay? You may have heard recently organizations such as Meta, Twitter, and Amazon announcing thousands of layoffs. Even Mark Zuckerberg apologized to his team, saying that what he predicted wasn't coming to play. And unfortunately, it was going to cost the jobs of thousands of people. So this teaches us that despite a plethora of projections, we can't quite predict which skills are in high demand or in danger of becoming extinct. For example, some researchers are claiming that by 2030, Europe and the US will see a 14% reduction in the need for physical skilled laborers, while technology professionals will be 55% more sought after. So how can anyone be successful under either of these circumstances? Well, we must develop the ability and constant willingness to learn new skills. And no less important, forget any competencies that have become obsolete due to the latest circumstances. Another important factor is we need to build up other leaders. With being more people-centric, one of our biggest jobs as leaders is to build other leaders. We're not meant to do this alone. As we help shape more confident teams and learn to lean on others, we can be certain that other leaders within our teams will begin to rise. This will not only empower team members, but avoid burnout from leadership. So some essential skills for today and tomorrow's leaders: empathy, communication, and understanding of organization and its member roles. In showing the need for empathy, we saw in a study by Paychex Works, the percentage of teens with low morale more than doubled during the pandemic. More than half of these respondents said that their managers neglected to recognize stress and burnout. However, study shows us that empathy in leaders lead to positive outcomes in the workplace by spurring innovation, driving engagement, and improving work-life balance. 61% of workers who experience empathy from their leaders reported being more innovative. 76% of those reported they were more engaged, and 86% felt they were able to achieve a work-life balance. Okay, and lastly, after all of this research and all of these surveys, it brings us to the understanding that the way leaders will be able to balance the workplace and workforce demands will be by leading their teams from the servant leadership mentality. Emotionally intelligent leaders and people-focused leaders know the difference between getting people to do what they have to as an obligation versus getting them to do that because they want to. We can have all the technology and all the pretty buildings, but if we cannot work with or make our teams work together, organizations will not succeed. And most importantly, we can't advocate enough for programs like this, programs like EML. So we encourage you as leaders to invest in your teams and put them in programs that will help them learn leadership skills as well. Okay, and as we're ready to conclude, we leave you with this little joke about how we understand how it's hard for some, maybe senior leaders or those that are set in their ways to want to change. So we have the CFO here saying, well, what happens if we invest in developing our people and they leave us? And then the CEO says, well, what happens if we don't and they stay? So just a little joke for you today. We thank you and appreciate the time that you took to listen to our presentation. And we sign off again, Sara, Kamille, Xochitl, and myself. Have a great rest of your day.